name is Gary Baumgarten, but I expect you already know that, and I welcome you to this discussion on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and of course, paltalk.com. Using a new software that allows me to broadcast to all of them. I may actually add a few platforms before this is all over. But anyway, that's not what you came here to hear. We've heard a lot of discussion about President Biden's Build Back Better plan, and most of the discussion is based on infrastructure improvements and costs to the nation. Is it going to end up increasing the deficit, or is it going to end up decreasing the deficit? But I think you and I are more interested in knowing how it affects us personally, and there are tax implications. Now, when we enter this discussion, I want to throw out a very important caveat. It has passed the House. It has not yet passed the Senate. The final bill, I have no idea what it's going to look like. Nobody really knows. But for sure, there will be some tax benefits to folks. And for some folks, it's going to cost them even more in taxes. And so everybody wants to know, how does that affect me, right? So I have welcomed back to our discussion Chris Whalen, CPA in New Jersey, who is always ready to take what's confusing to me and put it in terms that I understand. Chris, welcome to the Gary Baumgarten Report.
Thank you, Gary. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yes, and happy Thanksgiving to you. So you heard what I had to say. I understand it kind of in broad strokes. I know what it is intended to do. I know some of the programs. It does have bipartisan support, but the Democrats want more. The Republicans want less, and there's a senator in West Virginia that wants even less maybe than the Republicans want. So how it all washes off in the end, I don't know. But basically, for a middle-income person such as myself, Chris, is this going to be a tax benefit or a tax deficit to me?
Well, a middle-income person that does have itemized deductions, especially in the higher tax states, New York, California, New Jersey, will see a higher amount of what's called the SALT deductions as deductible now. It was limited to $10,000, meaning your real estate taxes and your income taxes to the states that you pay. For a married couple, that's going to go up to $80,000. It used to be unlimited. So that's definitely a tremendous tax break for my middle income clients all over the country. So that's yes, it does help higher income people. So for middle income people, but also a lot of middle income people do still get the child tax credit, which is and that's going to be even more increased in 2021 to basically $3,000 a child, up from $2,000, sometimes $3,600 a child, depending on the age. So middle income people definitely are getting a break on a lot of fronts here with this plan.
Now, when they talk about the funding, what they say is, well, the president says, we'll fund this, no problem, because we'll just tax the rich more. So I would presume that if I'm in the higher income bracket, I'm not going to be so enamored with this BBB plan.
Well, they did raise taxes on some of the very, very high earners. I mean, in the millions of dollars. So it's not really taxing the majority of, let's say, the 1%ers that would be between, let's say, $750,000 and $3 million. Let's say that's a high earning person. So in one way, their rates are not going up at the top for them. Some people over 5 million maybe, but that's a very few people, and that's very small dollars, right? Even if I taxed everyone at 5 million or greater at a greater percentage, it doesn't help the deficit too much. So that's, but one thing that they did do is a lot of high net worth people have S corporations. Okay. They have businesses, or they're working for them, where they have part of what they earn from an S corp are wages, and part of what they take are dividends. So let's say you have $1 million company, and I make $1 million out of my S corp. I take $250,000 as wages, $750,000 as a dividend. In the past, that $750,000 wasn't subject to some of the taxes that my earnings were taxed at. So they're starting to tax that. So for a lot of people, not in terms of a regular income tax rate, but terms of an investment type tax, their taxes are definitely increasing, and this affects people making more than $400,000 a year than people making less. So definitely, all overall, it's definitely a higher tax rate burden for people making over 400,000 on average.
Now, I hear a term that's kicked around. Certain words can be triggers for people. And the phrase I hear kicked around is income tax surcharge. And when I hear the term surcharge, I wonder, what does that mean? Does that mean that there's a hidden tax?
Well, I was just talking about one of them is with that S corp. That's more of a surcharge. So it really only affects higher income people in
So
different
when you
situations.
say surcharge, what does that actually mean? Because um, obviously they're taxing people based on their income anyway. When you hear the term surcharge, which I've heard people on the business networks talk, that doesn't mean that there's something hidden there.
No, but it's usually a surcharge is on certain types of income, right? They'll say if, and that's why they try to make the more money that you make, the more types of investment income you have, right? So they'll give an additional surcharge. So you'll have your regular tax rate, say 20%, but then you also might pay an additional surcharge on top of some other type of income just to make some people in the high net worth areas pay more. But it
So,
can take many forms.
so I know that you, Chris Whalen, have a lot of small business owners as your clients. And we also know that the small businesses, especially on the retail end and the hospitality end, have really been hurting because of the pandemic. They continue to hurt post pandemic, or maybe in between two pandemics. God forbid the South African strain makes its way to the United States. How does all of this help them?
Well, especially those that have children are fantastic. I have to say that the last year the PPP programs and idle loans were really a blessing for a lot of people. That was really well done. So this doesn't it simply will give them less tax to pay at the end of the year and more to reinvest in their business. So overall, if you're a middle income person, whether you're a business owner or not, it's going to give you more discretionary income. And also with the child tax credit, remember they're starting to give this ahead of time, right? You can get it months ahead of time by the month. So everyone should make sure they're applying for that if they're not getting it. There's a portal for that. So I think the best part about this, I want the middle income to have a break and have tax savings, but to know that there's not going to be an increase is the most important part of it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I keep muting because I feel like I have to sneeze. But that time it didn't happen. Yes, that does make sense. Um, so it's really interesting because when we debate this, from what I'm hearing from you, Chris Whalen, it could be that if I'm looking at this from a more global standpoint, worried about how it's going to affect the health of the nation's economy down the line, I might say, "Oh, this is bad. This is a bad program because it's going to hurt the economy." But if I look at it individually, I might say, "Well, this is a good program," and I think people tend to go with what helps them individually.
Right. Well, we can't be short-sighted. So remember the domino effect of these funds and these credits and lower taxes, will we it might cause a deficit this year. Let's say it causes some kind of deficit, but keeping the businesses especially in play and keeping people situated in their homes and saving their homes only makes for more stability going forward in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. So those that look at this as an annual play, I'm giving up this much money in taxes, oh, are we making up for it? Well, you can't think that short-sighted. So no doubt that this kind of program will put more money back into the economy. There's no doubt that the people are going to be spending the money that they're getting, saving some, but no matter, it's proven time and time again that this money is going to go into them boosting the local economies, the regional and state and federal level economies. So that money is going to be used over and over again to shore up other people. So will it eventually filter to the government in terms of the deficit being reduced? Possibly, but I'm more concerned right now of getting post-pandemic, getting everyone feeling emotionally secure in their finances, and that bodes well for the next decade. So I don't care if we have a deficit this year from this. We probably will, but in the long run, the benefit to families that have been through so much is emotionally so positive. It's well worth it.
Yeah, it's interesting because on the stimulus checks that people were getting, I have friends who were so opposed to that program on the basis of a political ideology. But then they would be calling me, do you know, did the checks go out? I'm waiting for my check. I haven't received my check. And I would say to them, well, wait a minute, I thought you were opposed to this program. Well, yeah, but I want my money.
Right.
So, it's always about how it affects me rather than how it affects you, unfortunately, or how it affects society as a whole.
And everyone has to remember that there is, there is significant income disparity in the country. And so if we will have some higher taxes from the high level, that's going to pay for this. There's no doubt that people in the higher tax brackets will be paying more money in many instances. So that's doing what people do want. They want the rich to pay a little more, and it's giving some of the lower income. But the important point here, there's a talking point that happens all the time. Let's say there's a wealthy person who is going to save money under this plan. That gets everyone upset. And then they skew the discussion based on the amount of money. So let's say I have $1 million taxpayer that saves $4,000, right? So we know that's a fraction of 1% of income. On some of these child tax credits, I could have a family getting another 3 or 4,000. That could be 40% of their tax. So there's never ever an instance where a higher taxpayer is, relatively speaking, getting the same amount of dollars that a lower income person does. So it's important to remember that everyone should share in some benefits sometimes, but we have to check some of the pundits who want to say, oh, look, that someone in $1 million range saved 5,000, a lower income person saved 3, but relatively speaking, it's a tiny amount of tax. And we could also get into the discussion, do the rich pay their fair share of taxes, which I have a whole seminar about. So that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, well, you just opened the door to that, but we're too late into our discussion to get into that. We are facing and dealing with an inflationary spiral. All of us, when we go to the store, we know we're paying more for food, and when we go to the gas pump, we're paying more for gasoline. Those are the two areas where it really hits us in the face. But one area where we have seen, I think, out of control costs long before this inflationary spiral was healthcare. There are people who put off procedures because their insurance just doesn't cover enough of it. It can be a real problem for folks. People who've actually had to remortgage their homes or have gone bankrupt due to health concerns, depending on what their income status is. Are there credits here for healthcare?
Right. Well, of course, if depending on your income level, there's Obamacare. You can go online, you can get premium credits. So then that's being shored up even more. So if you're having a hard time paying for health insurance, depending on your income level, please go to the website. Go to the Obamacare, go to the website, it's really great coverage. And there's people that are missing out on thousands of dollars a month or a year to help them subsidize getting health care. There's no reason why there's so much available compared to 10 years ago that and the benefits are being shored up even more, and all the extra credits that were in 2021 are now being pushed towards for the future permanently. So don't forget, but going back to the initial point, the reason why higher education and healthcare is so expensive is because it's not transparent. So that's really what we need to fight for. I mean, we should be able, let's say I need an MRI on my knee, I should be able to go online and DoorDash and see, oh, MRI ABC down the block can give me this MRI for $50. So until we get transparency in higher education and healthcare, we need to demand that. Then this is going to continue to happen. There's no reason why it should be this expensive Nothing else goes up in price the way these two things have gone up, and that's because we have no control or transparency over what we're paying for. Does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense. There ought to be competitiveness in the marketplace when it comes to healthcare as well. I was in the hospital recently, not recently, but the last time I was in the hospital, I get this itemized bill, and it shows that my insurance company paid it off, and that was great. It doesn't bother me one way or the other as long as I don't have to pay it. And it showed a consult with a doctor. Well, look, I'm not an unaware individual, and I wasn't sedated while I was in the hospital. I guarantee you that doctor never once walked into my room. Now, maybe he and another doctor had a discussion in the hallway, or he picked up the phone and said, "Hey, what do you think I should do for this patient? Because you have the expertise." But that's not $3,000 that they should be charging my insurance company. And so I agree with you. In all of these areas, there ought to be transparency. And I think probably we need people like you to advocate for folks, people who understand the moolah shmoolah, because a lot of folks just don't.
Well, if you were running a business, a sandwich shop, and you didn't have to account for being responsible or being efficient, then of course you would not, and you would charge $3,000 instead of for a consult for a roast beef sandwich. So that's the problem. Like, we should be able to know if let's say my side is hurting and the ambulance picks me up, and the driver says, "Oh, go to Jersey Shore Medical because their average appendectomy is 10 grand." That's what you would get, right? So bring me there. Then suddenly the other hospitals are not doing any, and so this allows waste. And so imagine you didn't have to worry about your efficiency, and no one was trying to monitor what you were doing, and there's no way to grade. And so it's similar to the Board of Education. The contracts are similar, right? There's no way that I can tell if a sixth grade teacher should be fired. It's
right. You're opening up a whole new
but that's a
line of
problem.
discussion. But you're right. You're absolutely right.
These contracts shouldn't be legal, right? That if I have a daughter that's a teacher, they do the best they can. They're put in a bad position. So just an aside, so as a teacher in sixth grade, they should be graded on if someone's leaving their classroom with the grade level of sixth grade in English, let's say. But then they say, well, they can't control who comes in their class. But teachers have to be empowered to say, I'm not taking the fifth grade student that's not ready. And that's part of the same thing with the hospital system. How can we have an appendectomy for 80,000 and one for 15? And so it'd be better off, because all hospitals, like all sandwich shops, should not be doing everything, right? So some hospitals should not be doing appendectomies.
Well, there are a lot of retirees who are on Social Security. They don't have a pension. They didn't save, and they're on very, very limited budget, who are very happy that the borders are now opening again, because they will go across the border into Mexico to get their medications and their dental work, which is a fraction of the cost of here in the United States. And from all the reviews I've read, excellent dental work. So we ought to be able to shop this kind of stuff around, and we don't. We just go in, they tell us this is how much it is, and that's what we pay.
And we just need our elected officials to demand this transparency, demand auditing, of the hospital systems that we're supporting, we're having some change. But both the Republican and Democratic parties, you probably recall a time when they were very different, and it's pretty much a uniparty right now. So you can tell that the corporate interests are ruling. There's a lot of things that are so apparent that we need change to help us. It's our money we're spending. And Americans are fair. We want to spend money on everybody, but we don't know if we're getting the best price for the best care. And so that we know that's wrong. And we need someone in government to really champion that for us. That's what I would like to see. It just makes perfect sense that we need transparency. Our health care is the most expensive, the largest expense we have. So it should be the most scrutinized of all the expenses that we pay for.
And when it comes to our taxes, it's the school districts that get the bulk of our taxes, and so we should be able to scrutinize that with in terms of the cost effectiveness of the education.
Right,
Most certainly do.
exactly. We should. That's a problem. And again, teachers are fantastic. It's just that, think of a contract. I deal with them for 30 years. It seems to be an invalid contract again because I can't I can't gauge performance on one side of it, right? I'm supposed to have a contract. You're going to cut my grass. Okay, if half isn't cut, I don't pay you, right? So with the Board of Ed, they're so far removed. We have absolutely no control and no way to see what milestones are met, right, within the contract. Are you doing your job? And we need to enforce that. And it's very normal. No one should be against us enforcing, is a sixth grade teacher doing their job as an English teacher? We're paying the salary. Now, I think the answer usually is, I want to give them more responsibility and more money, but that's going to mean they have 95% of their students in sixth grade need to graduate at the grade level that of the subject they're teaching. And
Well,
if you don't do that,
I've done extensive reporting on chart. We're getting way beyond but this is a great conversation. I've done extensive reporting on some of the charter school programs. Now, yes, there are some that are set up as education mills, people who really don't know what they're doing. Their feet ought to be held to the fire, no question. But I've seen a number of them that have been very successful. In Detroit, there's a fellow who put up a lot of money, a philanthropist, to create this charter school program. And he went to the people running it and said, 90% of these children better make their way into college, or I'm pulling the plug on this and I'm going to turn this facility into lofts to make money off of it. And they really feel that pressure. And by the way, this particular school does not pick and choose. They don't look at the academics or the socioeconomics of the applicant. So they're taking kids from the entire pool available, just like the public school system is. And they're very, very successful. So, they are forced to be accountable. And there's an agreement, a contract between the folks running the school system and the funder. And there's a contract likewise between those folks and the teachers in the classroom. And it's fabulous how it works. Right. So that's what we need.
Well, right, and we need to hold children back, when necessary. And there's all this pressure on teachers to pass everybody through. There's certain school districts and certain towns in the nation that all the graduating class in high school cannot read or write properly, and so this is an outrage. And we need, again, people to champion this. And for healthcare and education, the two largest expenses, that's where we need the most scrutiny. I'm sorry, we need the most transparency, because one is keeping us alive and one is educating the next generation. The two most important things in our life, and we have the least control and information on both of them. It seems like that needs to change.
And remember, if we don't educate our children, then it's going to affect the economy, because I can't hire somebody if they can't read and write properly. And so it affects everything. It's not just being altruistic towards the children. If you look at it on a global sense, it's very important to the entire nation that we educate our children and make them the brightest and the best to their best of their abilities.
And giving that scrutiny going further, everyone would love to go to college, but we have a student loan problem where we have degrees that are not able to fund. So this is the funny thing. People talk about student loan forgiveness. One little aside again. All right, so if I bought a Cadillac, I drove off the lot, I went to the first light and the car didn't work, I would call the dealer, they'd have to warranty it. Okay, so the same thing with an education. If you ask every parent listening, I send my kid to a 4-year school, do you expect them to have a life-supporting job when they're done? The answer is yes. No school chancellors feel the way. This is the biggest consumer fraud problem I've ever seen. And so no, so if you have a student loan that you can't pay, you're not you aren't a lazy person at 25. You've been duped. You have to go back to the school and sue them because they haven't performed. It's assumed if you have a 4-year degree, you can support yourself. Every parent believes that. And if the schools don't believe it, there's the other area we need to higher education that we need to them to be responsible. Right? Think it's a very odd thing. I've kids with $100,000 of loans. They come out making 25,000, and that's fine. We need people making $25,000, but there should be a rule that you only could have maybe 1 year's worth of estimated expected salary in loans, and the school has to eat the rest. Because an accounting major, I should pay top dollar. If I'm going to be a CPA, I can make more money. I'm not more important. A social worker may make 28,000. They're more important than me, but their tuition should be relatively lower. See, the credit hour should be based on the amount of money you're going to make, because then your loans will be lower.
And that would incentivize the school system or the college system to help people find gainful employment after they get that sheepskin at the end of their 4 years, which to my knowledge, they don't really do. There's a trade school in Detroit, believe it or not, it's called Specs Howard School of Broadcasting. And they have a guy, he just died, Dick Kernan, who was in charge of making sure that if you graduated from here and you had the skills, that you would get a job. That's what he did. And I never heard a bad review, and I'm in the business. Right. So if the universities were to help get people their jobs and they were better paying jobs, then they could charge more under your plan.
You said there's no accountability. So what does a college have to do? So they're getting $50,000 a year. All they have to do is provide your child a desk in a classroom up to the add drop date. That's it.
Right.
And this is a child 18 taking a loan, and they have no more responsibility. Think about how, I don't know of any other lopsided transaction like that. So that's all they have to do. If you go one day past the add drop date, you lose everything.
Right. Because I don't know whether people understand what you're saying here, but when a kid enrolls in school, kids drop out. So there's a certain date based on that date, how many children are enrolled, that's how much funding the schools get from the state. And after that, if they drop out, they still get the funding.
Right. So there's no responsibility. So if I'm giving you $50,000 a year, $200,000, whether I take loans or not, you need to have a lot of responsibility. If my child is going away to your school,
okay, you're talking about. I apologize. You're talking about add drop on the collegiate level. I was thinking in terms of the public school, K through 12.
Oh no, but it's the same thing. It's the same. It good leads anyway. So I think if we had more transparency, it would help our children and help the elderly with health care. And it would bring prices down. Because not everyone should go to college. And one last thing about trades, please. The trades people are making more money than the average college graduate. So if you have an idea that you want to be a carpenter, man or woman, whatever you want to do, there's plenty of opportunities. I have many clients who can't find apprentices anymore, and the money is fantastic. The work is great, very fulfilling. I have openings right now that I could give people. Just a little plug. If anyone contacts me, they have a young child, son or daughter that might want to do something with a trade, please contact me. I could probably get them in touch with someone that would love to hire them.
You know, it's rare that I have a guest where we start the conversation one way and it's going so well that we expanded into so many other areas. Chris Whalen, you ought to have a Oh, wait a minute. You do have a podcast.
I do.
You want to plug it?
Sure. If you come to my website, chriswhalencpa.com, you'll be able to join up for my memos and my blogging and my podcasting. It's usually very good information, always original information. So I'd love to share it with you. So come to my website, chriswhalencpa.com, and you can leave me a message and tell me to add me to the blog post listing, and I'll do that right away.
Terrific. Chris, thanks for your time. I'm going to have you back on again. I don't know what we'll talk about, but we'll start with something and we'll go to something else. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Gary, very much. Thanks, everyone.
And everybody watching and listening, as I always say at the end of these discussions, peace out.